We'll now call to order the special committee on the transition to 14 wards. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderwoman Ingracia.
Aye.
Present.
Present. I'm sorry.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Ms. Boyd, we need for you to say present or here.
I'm sorry. Present.
Alderman Bosley.
Point of order, we need videos on for roll call and votes, please.
Oh, Ms. Boyd wasn't. Ms. Boyd, could you show your face on the screen? Thank you.
As I explained to the chair, I'm doing 2 meetings, and so I'm here.
Of course, we're doing lots of transportation work within the city.
Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderwoman Rice.
Present.
Alderman Todd. Alderman Page.
Present.
Alderman Stevens.
Here.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Present.
Alderman Grass. Alderwoman Walker. President Green.
Present.
Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Todd. Alderman Grass. We have 7 present.
Without a quorum being present, we are today just going to engage in open discussion. I have asked the clerk to call an additional meeting of the special committee for 14 wards at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, at which time we will take up Board Bill 183. But for today's purposes, what I would like to do is talk through some of the rationale that went into Board Bill 183 and give some feedback and go through a few slides about it. So if there are things that we need to update in advance of our meeting on Tuesday or additional questions that folks have, we can do that.
Chair, President Green, we do have Vaccaro here, so we do have a quorum now.
Yeah, I was dropping someone off to get their license plates downtown. So I'm here. Unfortunately,
Okay, so quorum is now present. So we can go back and do we can approve the minutes. So I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from would have been last Thursday, January 19th.
So motioned. So moved.
second.
It was moved by the alderman from the 12th, seconded by the alderman from the 23rd, that we approve the minutes from Thursday, January 19th. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Vaccaro.
Aye.
Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Thank you for that
Alderwoman
insight.
Rice.
We've had conversations definitely along
Did
these
you
lines
call
that
my
you
name?
pointed to.
Alderman
14
Rice.
million of the 93 million in economic justice is
Alderman
for
Todd.
neighborhood beautification and CDC capacity building. So we recognize
Alderman
that we
Page.
not only have to be a better
Aye.
steward of our LRA properties, but
Alderman
other
Stevens.
properties
Aye.
that have long been neglected. So not just mowing
Alderwoman
lawn
Schweitzer.
supposed to do, but actually address.
Alderman Grass. Alderwoman Walker. President Green.
Aye.
Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
And
Alderwoman Middlebrook, Alderman Todd, Alderman Grass. We have 7 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion on the approval of the minute. Alderwoman Rice?
Yeah, thanks. Going back to what you were just talking about before, we voted on the minutes, that I don't have any board bills in the folder.
Correct. It was
Okay.
not properly
Yes.
noticed, so that's why we're going to engage in general discussion and bring the bill before us on Tuesday.
Okay, so what's on the agenda is the discussion of something that now I'm blanking on, but not that. So, okay, so are we just gonna take up the discussion that was noticed on the agenda first and then talk about the board bill, or what?
We are talking about ward capital still.
Okay.
And then we're going to talk about, I think, constituent services is the other
Got
thing
it.
we're supposed to discuss today.
That's it. Okay,
So-
all right. I was just trying to wrap my head. I was like, if I need to pull up a bill, let me know. So-
No, so the bill did not, it was not clear to the clerk that that bill was supposed to be on today's agenda. So
Okay.
we are calling that meeting for Tuesday afternoon, but today we will go through some background discussion on it. So if there are questions today, we can incorporate any questions or concerns into a committee substitute to bring before everyone on Tuesday.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
All right. So with that said, I would like to first go through, share, if I can share my screen here. All right, can everybody see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the things that we've heard, from folks over the last couple of meetings where we've discussed ward capital is a desire to be more equitable in the allocation of those funds. And so the goal that we are trying to achieve is to distribute ward capital equitably amongst wards based upon need, and also distribute unencumbered ward capital from the old 28 wards amongst the new 14 wards, also in ways that promote equity. 50% of the capital improvement sales tax fund goes toward capital improvement account. And the original enabling legislation for ward capital, what was brought to voters simply asked voters to authorize the tax, and then the uses of that tax was passed through the board bill, through an ordinance. So we have the authority to change how those funds are distributed from equally to equitably through the amendment of that ordinance that was initially created. Currently, there is 9.8 million in ward capital improvements that constitute unencumbered funds. So these are funds that are not dedicated to a specific project at this point in time. How we went about trying to figure out a way to make these funds more equitable is to create a mechanism where every ward would have a base amount of funds, where 40% of funds that go toward capital would be divided equally across all wards, and then 60% of those funds would be divided equitably, and we'll go through what the equitable formula looks like in a minute. And then what we're calling a transition bonus is, sorry, I think I said those backwards. For the base, and I think the slide is wrong, actually. 60% is done equally, 40% is done equitably. And for the transition bonus, and the transition bonus is the unencumbered funds, 60, it would be the reverse, where 60% is done equitably and 40% is done equally. So I just noticed the slide is wrong here. So the variables that we were using to calculate the equitable percentages are median household income, where a ward can get 100 possible points, poverty rate, unemployment rate, vacant properties, educational attainment, and crime rates. And for this purposes, we're having to go off of some older data for educational attainment and crime statistics, because we have not yet received those variables. So a ward that shows the most need for a variable receives 100% points for that variable. And the ward that shows the least need for a variable receives 0 points for that variable. And so the closer the ward is to a highest need threshold, the more points they receive. And the total score is the sum of all of the points across the variables. So to show what this would look like, this is preliminary. As I said, we're still waiting on the most updated data for educational attainment and crime scores. But essentially, this would show that the new first ward would have a need score of 91 out of a possible 100. The second ward would have a 44, not out of a possible 100, because they're cumulative. Ward 2, 44, and so on and so forth. So you see the wards that have the highest need based upon all of these indicators are the new 12th ward, the new 13th ward, 14th ward, 11th ward, which kind of tracks with other things that we know about, poverty rates and issues within those wards. So out of the unencumbered funds, there's 12.1 million right now that we have to figure out how to redistribute across wards into the new 14 wards. And so under the formula that we are looking at, that would provide a base where everybody gets essentially $420,000 per year as their guaranteed base. And then the marginal increase is that need-based score. So how much more revenue or more funding they have that goes into their ward based upon that need score. And then the transition bonus is the additional funds that ward would receive when the unencumbered funds are distributed per the equitable formula. So you see under this formula that the wards that we previously identified, the 12th ward, the 13th ward, the 14th ward, the 11th ward as being the ones with the highest need in the third ward, those end up receiving the most amount of funding under this new formula breakdown. So for example, the new Ward 12 would receive about 1.1 million in regular annual ward capital and would get a $1.57 million in bonus as they transition into the new account. And the new Ward 4 would receive about 423,000 in regular annual ward capital allocation and 352,000 as part of their share for the reallocation of the unencumbered funds. So with that, I'm happy to take some questions. And if we need to go back to, hold on, I can't see hands. Let's see, let me look at my roll call here. Alderwoman Davis is not here. Alderman Vaccaro, any questions?
Well, just other than, yeah, I disagree with that, only because the 23rd ward as it sits and the 24th ward as it sits. Well, let's go 23rd ward. I got $200,000 in sidewalk work. Okay, that is supposed to be done. It's funded. We're waiting. I don't know where all the hangups are at. And I think it's unfair to say, gee, we're going to sweep all that back. And all these people that have been on these lists for 5 and 6 years and 4 and 5 years, because we, as a neighborhood group, we decided we're going to do all the sidewalks and get everybody cleared off. And now we're going to say, no, well, that's not going to happen. I think it's unfair.
Alderman, I want to be clear, that's not what this does. So if it's the funds are encumbered to sidewalks, they stay encumbered.
So yes, we signed the contract, we signed the paperwork to do it.
Yes.
But they haven't contract out, which means it's not encumbered. Whatever the hang up is in Darlene Green's office or wherever, because I keep trying to find out. It isn't, it should have been done already. This is money from whenever waiting to get spent. So to say that it's not, so I think it's wrong. Again, this is money. I spend all of our ward capital. If you look, we got $11,000 left. To say that we're going to go over everybody that's on the list because the city's been slow to award some of these contracts, that's wrong.
I would agree that that's wrong. And that's why that is not what this does. So because that money has already been encumbered to those projects. You've already signed the paperwork that has encumbered it to those projects. So the only money that would be pulled back is money that has not been assigned to a specific project.
Okay, well, we need to talk because I want to make absolutely sure of that. But okay. Anyway, other than that, that's really all I have. And then I'm going to listen. I think I'm going to try to drive so I can get home to a home thing. I'm getting on, but I'll decide, if something, I should be home in 5 minutes where I can get on a real computer.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Alderwoman Ingracia.
Thank you. I guess I share some similar concerns. I understand that unencumbered money or encumbered money is safe, but I have also set aside some money for projects that the constituents that I have think are important, but the city just hasn't been able to move fast enough to even get me paperwork to sign. So if there's a way we can have a discussion about that. I do like the fact that there's a formula. I think we need to be sharing the money more equitably. But to be honest with you, just based on all of everything that we have before us this week and the fact that I did not know that this was going to be on the agenda today, I'm going to need some time to digest it and think about it. And but I'm happy to work with you in between now and Tuesday with any questions. I just don't have any right now. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Alderwoman Boyd still here. Does not look like it. Bosley, Middlebrook, Alderwoman Rice.
Thanks. I guess all sort of the similar concerns. My brain was not prepped for a ward capital conversation today. I am planning, and I've told my constituents that there are several things that I've been in discussions with BPS about, and even with, sidewalks, I know I know a lot of that money used to come from St. Louis Works, and that money is not there at the moment. But my plan and what I've communicated to my constituents was to try to spend down what I have in the 8th Ward capital account as much as possible by April 17th. So signing contracts, signing over the money, whatever needs to happen so that the things that I've been working on with my constituents get done. So speed humps and some traffic calming measures. We have a couple of projects. We've got some major connection sort of stuff. And then the sidewalks that I've been waiting for the ask from the 50/50 sidewalk fund for how much more they were going to need from me, and have not gotten that request yet. So I think it's fair to talk about sort of what happens if there's money left over, but the number of 12 million, that may be very different by April 18th.
Yes.
And if that money drops down, and so I guess it would also be helpful to talk with BPS to talk with the rest of our colleagues and advise, like, hey, here is the process for getting your projects funded or getting that money allocated to the projects that you want to do before April 17th, like, so that we're all on the same page, that we have the opportunity until April 17th to go, like, to keep moving this money out and keep using it, that this isn't a set number. You can spend as much as you can before the end, and then at that point, that money will be moved around. And so I think really clear definitions about what it means to be encumbered, what it means, to just be allocated, or, sort of a wish list. And that, otherwise, I think we're going to run into a lot of big feelings about projects we're all trying to get done here as we're on the way out. So.
Right. And I want to be clear that in the board bill, it's all done through a formula, not through dollar amounts, recognizing that I know a lot of people are trying to spend down their accounts between now and April 17th. But if this went into effect today, this is the amount of money as of, I think we said on the slide I think the 23rd of January, that is how much unencumbered funds exist.
Okay.
And so that may change.
Yeah.
But as of today, basically that is what
Sure.
that is what exists.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I just, I would caution that if you're about to send out these slides to somewhere that the full board can access, that you be really clear about that. Like, put something in there that says this number is subject to change, like we won't have the final number there until April 18th, and decide what encumbered means. Like, does it mean that ENA has to have approved it? Does the money had to have been transferred to a new account? Like, what is the definition that you're working off of there, so that we can be moving towards goals there? The way that, like, I got defensive, I don't want the rest of the folks who aren't in this conversation at the moment to get defensive, if they're just looking at slides.
Okay. Sounds good. Alderman Todd is not here. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the effort that was put into this and those thorough slides that were presented. That's very helpful to understand what's going on. My concern is around more how ward capital can trip up some of the processes that exist in city government, just from being in existence the way it is and how it's allocated, and with alder people putting the money in certain areas as opposed to the departments. And I understand that's kind of a different thing than is being looked at right here, but I had a conversation with Spire and Kent Flake with the streets department on Monday to kind of understand their process. And so much of the issues that are run into with our street paving, for example, is that, one, there's not a long-term plan in the city of St. Louis for street paving. And then two, all of the money from what I understood from Kent that does street paving in the city of St. Louis comes from St. Louis Works and Ward Capital funds, which are allocated by alder people. And it makes it very difficult for the city to do planning if they're going to be relying on whether the alder person is going to move the funds or not. And having that in mind. So I'm interested in just kind of discussing that too, outside of this sort of allocation of just still being ward capital funds that are allocated by each alder person, as opposed to really thinking citywide about the way that what these funds are spent on and the planning process that's definitely made more difficult by the way the way the money gets assigned now, as by alder people in their own wards, as opposed to thinking citywide. I was at, a meeting this past Thursday in Bevo, and I said, yeah, the money's been allocated to repave Delore. That's the street that the streets department brought to me in my ward capital meeting to say that they wanted to get that repaved. And some of the residents were like, I can think of streets way worse than Delore to get repaved. I'm like, well, I'm sure you can, but the money here has to be spent in the 13th ward. And, that's in this piece in the 13th ward, and that's what they're going to do. And, I think that is sort of a systemic issue, that this bill, while it gets towards the equity of how the funds are allocated to each ward, doesn't address the actual systemic issue of how streets get paved, sidewalks get done, and all of that. So I'm going to sit back and listen to my other colleagues speak on this, but that's something that I feel like kind of came up from the community input that we received as well, and something that I think generally affects the city's ability to do planning and to work on streets in a way that actually creates citywide improvements. Thank you for letting me talk.
Alderman Stevens.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Thank you for the demonstration today. I would echo the Alderwoman of the 8th in that I think it is beneficial to note very candidly that this presentation is for demonstrative purposes only in terms of the figures presented. I think the formula makes sense. I think it's very sensible. I would ask, is this formula for specifically just this transition period from going from 28 to 14, or is it intended to remain in place essentially in perpetuity when it comes to ward capital allocations?
It is intended to remain in place in perpetuity. So,
okay, so
going forward, funds would be distributed equitably rather than equally.
Okay. I agree with that. And I do think that it puts, I think that even through the formula and all the facts and figures that we can put in front of people showing like, well, hey, this is the poverty rate, this is the unemployment rate, the vacancy rate, XYZ, there's always going to be people that are very righteous in their feeling of being robbed by North City. Trust me, I'm the 12th ward alderman. So I agree with this approach moving forward with the system. I would opine that there are so many flaws with the ward capital system as highlighted by my colleagues, notably Alderwoman Schweitzer and Alderman Vaccaro, that, well, and even Alderwoman Ingrassia now that I think of it, but this ward capital system only serves to blur the line between public administrators and public officials. So I disagree with the entire system and think it should be repealed by voters. So through the lens, through the framework or lens of this being an inherently broken system, I do think this is the best foot forward. And I do appreciate the presentation and the explanation of the formula. And I'm glad to hear that it is remaining more or less permanent moving forward.
I am going to have to, Alderwoman Boyd is not here. Alderwoman Rice, could you take over the meeting?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, hi. All right. We're a little bit on the fly today. So I think Alderman, I think if I was hearing you correctly, one of your concerns was about what the voters put into place and versus what we're talking about potentially doing here.
Is that to me, Alderwoman Rice?
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize. Could you clarify the question?
Sorry, I thought I heard that you say that you were concerned about what was put in front of the voters as far as when we passed this back in 1993 and potentially needing to send this back. Is that what, did I miss?
Oh, no, I apologize.
Okay.
And you heard me correctly. I suppose that I should have clarified that. I'm a firm believer in public administration versus public elected officials. I've studied public administration. I'm biased in that front, but as Alderwoman Schweitzer said, I don't think that I am equipped to make decisions regarding road improvements, for example, because it's not just road improvements, right? I am not a civil engineer or a urban and planning design. So I think that the entire system, the entire concept of our ward capital approach, which itself was a Band-Aid to fix and address systemic problems with city governance stemming from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I think that it is inherently sort of outlived its usefulness in addressing the issues that it sought to address back in 1993. I mean, that was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's all it is. I recognize why we have ward capital. I'm just categorically against public officials having the power to say, you didn't vote for me, so I'm not repaving your street. And I don't believe any single one of us in this committee would do that. But every single one of us in this committee are empowered to do that through the allocation of ward capital funds. So
Okay.
I'm in support of this board bill because it's a sensible approach to what I view as already a sort of flawed system. That's all.
Okay.
Or a system that could potentially be flawed, I should say.
Okay. All right. I will, let's see. It looks like next on the list was Alderwoman Schweitzer, yeah.
Alderman Page would be next.
Okay. Sorry, we went a little bit out of order. Alderman Page.
Yes, thank you very much. Madam Acting Chair. Yes, we'll get these titles right. I rise in 100% support of equitable versus equal distribution of ward capital funds. But I do have a couple of concerns that are probably along the lines of those expressed by the alderman from the 23rd and the alderwoman from the 6th. And let me tell you briefly what I mean by that. When I came into office, I worked very diligently with my constituents, with my neighborhood associations, my neighborhood leadership groups, to determine pressing needs in my ward. And one of those pressing needs that I could see myself and people continuously reported to me is the need for street repairs and paving. So here's how my ward capital stands right now. 3 of my ward capital projects have been encumbered. All the documents, all the allocations, all the documents are signed off. One of them is 100% complete. 2 of them are awaiting implementation. But here's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. I earmarked a large portion of my ward capital funds to contribute to street repair and paving. And I developed something that I know many of you on this call will be tired of hearing. It's my comprehensive street repair and paving plan that I have been negotiating with the streets department, informing BPS, informing the mayor's top staff, everybody who would listen about this plan to express the need for improvement of the streets in my ward. Well, as it turns out, essentially no one got any street repair and paving. So here I am with funds earmarked. So now what I plan to do is get those funds encumbered during the remainder of this term, so that, as I understand the slides that the president went through, and I thought the concept was wonderful. I really like the math behind the slides. But I think I and others will be working to get funds encumbered, which will reduce those millions of dollars of unencumbered funds. But the rest of the formula still stays the same as far as the needs-based distribution. Is my interpretation of what I just watched accurate?
Yes, it is. So we could be at a place where, April 18th comes and every member of the board has encumbered all of their ward funds, and then nothing gets redistributed. But even if that scenario happens, going forward, the funds will be allocated based upon need, rather than just being done equally.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I thought. Well, to make it real simple, I like what I saw. I like the concept. I like the philosophy behind it. And I'm speaking purely based on modification of the current ward capital taxation and allocation. It's a whole different concept, a whole different discussion as far as discussing the theory, the application behind ward capital citywide. That's a whole different discussion. But my comments about the modifications that were presented, and I'm in favor of them, I've just got to get more things encumbered and quickly. Thank you, and I yield back.
Alderman Gross here? I don't think so. Alderwoman Walker.
Guys, I apologize. I'm still in HUD's meeting. I don't have any idea what you guys talking about, so it would do me no good to comment, but I promise I will go back and watch this entire meeting on YouTube.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. All right, any further discussion? We will take in the feedback that we've heard today and work in making some amendments to the bill before we hear it on Tuesday, specifically to make sure that that language is very tight around what it needs to be encumbered. Alderwoman from the 6th.
Thank you so much. I didn't hear this, but I think maybe the Alderwoman from the 8th did. I think maybe 2 of the individuals who are signed up to speak in this committee need to be in HUD's talking about an allocation of ARPA funds. I just wanted to make sure that David and Mark were in the correct place for their public testimony.
All right, Mark, David, what bill are you supposed to be testifying on?
If I may, we were at the Neighborhood Association meeting in Hyde Park last weekend, and Mr. Bosley indicated that we might want to be present for both this meeting and the previous HUD's meeting. When I contacted Mr. Kennedy with our information, we unfortunately learned that we had a deadline yesterday and got it in later in the afternoon. But I think you all received the documents in the email documents that I sent to him that describe this museum library World Heritage Museum that we are proposing for the 14th Ward. The new 14th Ward. We would love to introduce you to this concept as the committee about the transition. And it seemed a wise idea to bring it to you all as opposed to being directly in that HUD's meeting, which we were not invited to be speakers at.
Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't any confusion.
Right.
Thank you.
We're not, this committee does not have jurisdiction over ARPA funds. But why don't we, in order to be cognizant of your time, why don't we allow for our public testimony, and then Alderman Stevens will go to you to wrap us up. Are you presenting on constituent services today? No.
Sorry, Madam President. Not on constituent services, as I was committee consolidation subcommittee and rules.
Okay.
So I apologize if I've confused.
That is all right. I don't know that we have a report from that subcommittee today.
Constituent services?
Yes. All right, well, then let's proceed with our public testimony. First person, let me get my speakers list here.
Yeah, Charles Bryson.
Okay, Charles Bryson, you are first. Charles, do you commit to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you.
You may proceed.
Thank you, President Green and members of the committee. I will be brief. Number one, I certainly appreciate the work that you all are doing. As a member of TrailNet, I think that you are doing some of the most important work as we move to transition. I think you all have expressed numerous times the what I would call the two issues involved. One is how to equitably distribute the funds. We have reviewed the Alderwoman's, I'll use that term, Alderwoman's previous bill, now president of the board, from I believe 2018, which has some of the same metrics attached to it, and find them to be useful as a starting point for the discussion. We would respectfully disagree slightly with some of the metrics and think that some others could be added that would benefit disadvantaged communities. The second challenge is going to be, and TrailNet has expressed this on many occasions, the challenge is going to be where the resources need to be housed to make it possible for the work to be done. And whether that's the streets department, whether that's BPS, whether that's planning, that's probably going to be, I would think, the biggest challenge that you all have is figuring out where to have the money located so that it can be easily accessed and the work easily done. And finally, the last challenge I will say is by going down to 14, we may have more of a city and a city view by the alderpersons versus having 28 wards. So hopefully, as we move toward April and that election and the days after, that body, with President Green as the helm, will look at the city in a much different manner and look at the resource allocation citywide versus ward by ward by ward. With that, I want to thank you for the opportunity and certainly would certainly answer any questions if necessary.
Thank you. Mr. Bryson, would you be able to send over to my office, either to myself or to Christina, if there are other metrics that you think would be beneficial to be used in this formula?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
No,
yes.
We're happy to take a look at that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? All right, if not, I will take our next speaker.
It is Cindy Mintz.
Don't see Cindy.
If I may, I think Cindy had another engagement, so I don't think she'll be here today.
And next they have David Holtz, and after him, Mark Pappas.
All right, David, if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
You may proceed.
President Green and members of the committee, thank you so much for the honor of presenting to you today. I come touting an idea for cultural connection in our city. I really appreciate this monumental task that you're undertaking of transitioning to a smaller ward set and dealing with all of the organizational challenges therein. I'm representing two new nonprofit organizations in Hyde Park, in the Hyde Park neighborhood. The first is Hyde Park Atelier of the Arts and Sciences, and the second is Civic Arts Development Corporation. Technically, we're still starting up as far as operations and such, but we have the organizations intact in their 501c3s, and we are intent on uplifting and supporting the cultural arts and sciences in St. Louis. Most importantly, we have a new museum that we'd like to bring to the city, built on the site of the historic and honorable Duval Public Library branch on North 14th Street. This old Carnegie Library has an opportunity to be a fully inclusive World Heritage Museum representing the entirety of our community here in St. Louis and connecting us to the rich world heritage that all of our international community represents. Mark has an extension, my colleague Mark Pappas has an extensive plan and design for this, and we are bringing this idea to you all to let you know what's happening, but also to hopefully spark the idea in your mind of how we can attach to assets, both professionals and funding wise, in order to make both this museum and our organizations real civic assets for this whole community. We can go into a lot of detail, and I'd like to pretty much summarize my goal here. I feel that as you all establish the new 14 wards, it's very important that we uplift the cultural of our community. People need to be able to identify with the city. They need to identify with our multifaceted heritage and all that that encompasses. I hope that in each of these new wards, you will focus on uplifting cultural areas and making them public safety corridors so that the citizens of our community have safe places to walk, see artwork, and engage in cultural experiences. And I'm willing to take questions after Mr. Pappas presents. Thank you so much.
Great. Alderman Stevens, or can you wait on your question? Okay. Then Mark, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Raise your right hand, please.
Yes, I do.
Great, you may proceed.
Good evening, Madam President and board members. My name is Mark Pappas. I'm a St. Louisan, and I was away for many years and I returned, and the Carnegie Library in Hyde Park was available. I'm an artist painter. I bought it as a studio at first, but I always thought this could be so much more. And so in the following years, I've designed and devised and researched extensively an open air museum. And this is very important. It wants to be an open air museum on the 1.20 acres this 10,000 square foot building is positioned on. And the grounds are terraced. They're very beautiful, right next door to Clay School. And in the future, both these institutions could become continuous campuses. But what's really important to me is the location. It is a strategic location. At the new entry are the McKinley Bridge, Route 3, Illinois Route 3, and Route 3, and feeding off into Missouri onto Salisbury Street is the initiated Route 66. But that's just a little history. But again, the location is perfect. It receives high visibility, and with an open air museum with art and architectural exhibits manifested on the grounds, it would be a sight to behold. And these art and architectural artifacts that will be built, they will be used as for the students. You know, for example, I have designed a step pyramid that will rise above a very large square labyrinth. And so this project wants to be extremely mindful. And when students come on site, it's a site of peace, like Peace Park in College Hill. And there's just so much. But I envision that we have a team of docents and mentors and muses who will be trained in mindfulness and social work, and they could counsel students and encourage them to center and discover, if they have not already discovered, their talents and their gifts. And in other words, the building stands as a monument. And at the cornice ledge of this Beaux Arts building, there are the 16 subjects of the arts and sciences. And it starts with music, art, history, travel, science fiction, politics, oratory, poetry, drama, ethics, religion, and trades law. All these subjects are sacred in a sense. You know, law is sacred. Ethics and religion is very sacred. So the arts and sciences, my vision and my quest and furthering my education, this has brought me to a place where I am appreciating so much more the arts and sciences. And I think it's very necessary that this is shared and reinterpreted and revisioned and reactivated this site with these subjects, because it is just important. It is high education, and high education essentially is very simple. Wouldn't it be? It's like a flower just opening up very simply, and yet it's very complex, the mechanisms and the life force. So this is what it wants to express: a complete goodness, complete mindfulness. And if you're lost, a student can come on site and they can talk to a docent and have counseling, and encouragement is so important for all of us. And so thank you for listening. It's a wonderful building, and it really needs to be activated. And another thing that is important to me in my business perception, it is at the entrance to Hyde Park, which 15 blocks away is the NGA and other important developments on the Parnell-Jefferson corridor project of St. Louis City. So it's strategically located. And here's something: the Phillips 66 station on the corner of Salisbury and North 11th Street, it is on the same block as this library building, block 1190. Now, this man, he's been in business many years. He wants to sell it. He wants to, and he owns the rest of the city block. And I own the library. I own the little house right next door. And I look out and I pick up trash every day, and I try to do the best I can. But Nidal, the owner of the gas station, he wants to sell the other half of this city block. Now, what if, as a city, what if we can get together and purchase that other parcels of the city block 1190? Then this museum library would have a whole city block like Clay Elementary School. And then again, the location, it would be extraordinary. Have you driven by here at night? Clay School is dark. The library is dark, although Most Holy Trinity is lit up with designer architectural lights. These two buildings, Clay Elementary School and this future museum library, could be lit up, designer architectural lightings. It would be a sight, and it would be a welcoming sight into St. Louis City, into North City, to access the NGA and other developments. I think it's perfect. I really do. And thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Any questions from the committee? Alderman Stevens.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, and our speakers today. I wanted to clarify a point. I believe Mr. Holtz at one point mentioned Duval Library, and was that just because we're using two different, we're referencing two different libraries, the museum library and then also Duval Library?
That's a great clarification. The Duval branch was originally sited at this Carnegie Library on North 14th Street, and the modern day Duval branch is in existence. I forget what street it's on, but this is the historic original building named for Ira Duval.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
The new Duval branch is on North Grand, and Ira Duval, he is very, very important city citizen. He was the superintendent of St. Louis Public Schools for 11 consecutive years. After the Civil War, he became the superintendent. And also he devised the library system of St. Louis. And he was known as the father of libraries during this period of time. And also what is so significant about Ira Duval, he initiated the development of 3 public schools for the indigenous Black community of the period. after the Civil War, because until that time, there were no public schools for the Black community. And he initiated those 3 public schools, and from there became the concept and the manifestation of Sumner High School. So he's really relevant in our contemporary world. And it's funny, I just got an email just the other day or yesterday from St. Louis County. There was an email that was, please forgive me. It's an email that is wanting information on what's the word? Forgive me, I'm losing my words.
Signs of oppression, is that the one that you're talking about?
Yeah, what is it called?
It was the county has developed a department or some outlet where residents can write in about anything that they deem as an oppressive symbol in the region.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, an obsessive symbol, exactly. And this and it could be a Confederate soldier, it could be a name of a street, it could be a sculpture. But see, Ira Duvall is just the opposite of this information. He is humane and he was way ahead of his time, very mindful. And so we want to promote Ira Duvall. We want to remember him. After all, this is a memory museum, and we must remember the great things of this whole region, the Mississippian culture and all the great Native Americans. And now here we are.
Yes.
All of us.
Well, thank you, Mr. Pappas. Thank you. And I do appreciate the invocation of the legacy of Mr. Duvall. Prior to becoming alderman, my professional career was in public libraries and art museums. So this is quite up my wheelhouse, if you will. Specifically St. Louis Public Library, as it were. And you are correct, the both of you are correct in that our Carnegie libraries, of which there's several still in operation even in the city of St. Louis, are part of our cultural heritage and legacy. So I applaud your taking on the original Duvall Library and also clarifying the separation from the current Duvall Library and the older one in undertaking this project. I would ask that, or perhaps recommend even, let me rephrase entirely. What would be beneficial for myself, and I believe for the new 14 ward aldermen and alderwomen, would be comparisons, sort of like what other cities have done. Dallas comes to mind. They have an excellent museum and arts district where they do have open air, walkable, bikeable, so on and so forth situations. Even our own St. Louis Public Library, and I believe St. Louis County Library, now do storybook walks in collaboration with, say, the Botanical Gardens or other entities. So I'm as I scroll through, and I do apologize to you both. I need to look further into the written testimony on the Hyde Park Atelier of the Arts and Sciences. I appreciate the information you've presented. I would merely say that it would also be helpful to see the success in other areas. You know, how successful is City Parks, for example? I'm sorry, City Garden rather, here in St. Louis. And I believe we would all agree that that's quite successful. Forest Park, I think that would be within the scope of this sector, if you will. But all in all, I wanted to clarify that you all weren't coming to the Board of Aldermen seeing if we could work on behalf of St. Louis Public Library, because I was confused there. And St. Louis Public Library, of course, is its own semi-private institution now. So thank you for the presentation today, the invocation of our city's history and cultural legacy, and for your interest in serving North City, because the arts and are absolutely lacking, and the arts should never be, how do we say, gatekept, you know? And they should not be something that only the well off, or the erudite, or the, XYZ have access to. So all that said, I appreciate your time coming today. I appreciate your presentation. And with that, Madam President, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Page.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, and members of the committee. I just wanted to rise and share my excitement for this project. I have met Mr. Pappas on multiple occasions, specifically at Hyde Park Neighborhood Association meetings and other gatherings in the Hyde Park area. And no, Hyde Park is not part of the current fabulous Fifth Ward. But as you might imagine, I'm very excited about everything that's going on in every square inch of the new 14th Ward. Just wanted to give you a little bit of an exhibit of my excitement. If you can see this, this is one of Mr. Pappas's information packages that I received from him and discussed with him at a recent meeting. And I'm going to plan, as I told him, I'm going to plan a visit to the site. And I'm sure that visit is going to increase my excitement. Why am I excited about this? I'm looking at things that will raise the academic consciousness of the North Side. I think this museum library, in addition to the new outdoor exhibits at the Griot Museum of Black History and other institutions within the North Side, are going to raise the boat higher. So I am excited about this project, and I would like to know what I can do, not at this moment, but offline, what I can do to support this project. Thank you, Madam President, members of the committee. I yield back.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any further questions? Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today. Definitely appreciate you taking the time, and we all learned a lot and really appreciate your work, and look forward to opportunities for partnership in the future. All
If
right.
you may, one question. Thank you so much for this opportunity again. And we have been invited to be present for this meeting once a month with our speaker logins. Should we join you all once a month to talk more about our progress and introduce those who may not have been introduced so far? Or I understand your time is very valuable, so I don't want to gum up this works.
Yeah. Typically a new link is sent out every time somebody signs in. At least that's the way it typically works. So you would have to sign up again to come and testify at another time.
Okay. Would that be beneficial for your group, or should we just go through other channels?
I think, once you're a little bit farther along, I think definitely coming back, and if there's things that we can be supportive with in the process, don't hesitate to reach out to my office or to Alderman Page or Alderman Bosley, who I think all of us are willing to assist in the ways that we can assist.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Any further announcements from committee members? All right, excused alder people. Let's see, who was not actually here today? I know folks were in and out.
We had Alderwoman Davis, Middlebrook, and Gross, and also Todd.
Okay, if we could please excuse those alder people for necessary absence. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 23rd, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 8th, that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed. Motion carries. I'll see you at 2 o'clock on Tuesday.